Hi, everyone. The whole topic of trust and mistrust is on everybody's minds and lips these days. There's so much information that we hear on social platforms, in the media, from business leaders, from politicians, from healthcare professionals, and all of it has a profound impact on what we do and how we do business. That's exactly what we'll talk about this week on Connect the Dots. Hi, everybody. I'm Carla Johnson, and I'm delighted that you are joining me here today because Connect the Dots is where we dig into the process that some of the world's most original and prolific innovators use to consistently connect the dots between what inspires them from the world around them, the work that they do, and how they put it into play every single day to deliver extraordinary outcomes. This topic today about trust is a big one, especially as it ties into innovation. And I am delighted to have somebody with us here today, the godmother of partnering, and how trust plays into that and all of the innovative things that she has done over the last 35 years. In fact, she has helped more than 48,000 executives create high trust business cultures in the last 35 years. And she's worked on over 4,000 projects that total $180 billion. This is how she has perfected her partnering approach model. Sue Dyer is the president of Sudico and the author of 4 books. And her next book is called Trusted Businesses Must Have Trusted Leaders, using partnering approach to become the trusted leader for your business. And that will be out in February of 2022. Welcome to Connect the Dots, Sue.
Well, thank you, Carla. I'm so excited to be here. It's so important to talk about trust and innovation together, as I think they're like peanut butter and jelly.
It's interesting. Since you and I started talking, I don't know, a month or 6 weeks ago, it's fascinating how much I've seen the topic of trust come up in the news media, especially with everything that's going on with what we've had with politics and healthcare this last year. But I think also when we look at what's next for business, there's a lot of conversation about trust and leadership. And also, it segues into innovation. But what are you hearing the most? And what do you think matters the most for business leaders and leaders at all level when it comes to trust right now?
Well, I think that the biggest strategic trend I see is the movement towards AI and digital organizations. And, AI and those processes love complexity. But as you deal with people who actually have to make the decisions and the strategies, they don't deal with complexity so well. So I think that trust is going to be the essential element that's required for these new businesses, or as people are evolving and they want to scale into becoming a digital business, which everyone's going to have to become. We have to have more and more people working together. We have to have different divisions working together. We have to have external partners working together. And what it's creating is a worldwide interdependent business process. And when you're interdependent, you really can't have this trust-fear relationship because it means a lose-lose for both sides. And that's what I really see. The biggest trend I see is that we are becoming totally interdependent. And it's a very special type of relationship when you're interdependent. And so you have to build a high trust environment in order to succeed. And the people that can, the leaders that can, will do really well. And the leaders who can't, won't.
Now, that's really interesting how much you emphasize the human and the people part of AI and technology, because I think there's a lot of assumptions that these will take over a lot of the roles that humans will do. And, some may displace humans, some may reassign them, some may free them up to do work that's more valuable. But the idea that we need more human element and more trust behind all of this technology is something that I haven't heard people talk about before.
Oh, yes. I just don't think that you can have AI without the human element of creating the strategies or even implementation. Some things will be done digitally, of course, and there will be a role for that, but there will be a bigger role and a different role for the humans who have to then create strategic alliances and gather more people around. It's going to be like more like you can't just sit in your own little bubble anymore. You're going to be interdependent with lots of other different people and different organizations. And I think that is the essential element of why trust will be the entry level required in order to succeed in the years and decades to come.
Now that's interesting. Something I read this last week said that teams that are the most innovative have members who don't have the same circle of friends. So essentially they all come into the team with completely different experiences and backgrounds and situations. And when you look at that element of trust and how people start to accept input, accept, potential ideas, potential outcomes, when everybody comes from a different background and disposition, how do you see all of that working together?
Well, that's really what we have done for 35 years in I call it my living laboratory on construction projects, in that we had people came together for different businesses. Many of the projects have 100 different businesses coming together, and they have to actually achieve something. And so what I've realized over the 35 years is that actually it is those diversity of perspective that actually creates the magic. Because someone can come in and I have my own perspective and I see this, and from my point of view, I think, well, that's the right way, right? That's it, my perspective. And the trick is to create enough trust so that instead of us arguing over whose perspective is right, we end up listening to each other's perspective so that I understand your perspective and you understand mine. And then we see the possibility or the issues, the challenges as being much more global, much more complex. And we see possibilities that you just could not see if you were all on your own or in a homogeneous group. And so it's actually the heterogeneous group that actually can create things that are extraordinary.
Oh, that's interesting. Now, in this last year, and you touched on this just a minute ago, any company that wasn't already in the digital world or hadn't gone through digital transformation sure caught up in a quick minute, or else they were, probably out of business, sitting on the side of the road. But this ability to respond really quickly, in our world's case in this last year, it's been to a pandemic that affected industries in ways we could never expect. It forced people into decisions that a lot of companies had been laboring for many years. I knew one small company that had been talking about working on digital transformation for 5 years and couldn't get it together. And then in a matter of 5 months, it was completely in place and buttoned up and all together. What is it that people need to know about teams in times of crisis, in times of duress, that builds trust in a very short amount of time? And how does that compare to building trust just on a regular, everyday kind of business environment?
Yeah, so what I see is that when there's a sense of emergency, and you have a focus, it's the same thing that works every day, but we don't imply it every day. You get alignment, you get focus and alignment, and that focus and alignment, and you're all in this together. So you've got cohesion, and that cohesion builds momentum, and all of that is built around trust. If you don't have trust, nobody will focus, nobody will align, nobody will do what they need to do. But when you have an emergency, people set aside their disinterest and they set aside maybe the differences that we have for meeting this emergency. The trick is to get that kind of focus and alignment every day in everything that you do. And I have this adage where people don't argue with what they help to create. So that's where the partnering process has people come together and co-create what it is they're going to do and the solutions they're going to create, or the innovations they want to work on and how they're going to do it. If they're a part of the creation process, then people buy in and they fully implement them and they create extraordinary things. When they hit a roadblock, they no longer say, well, let me wait and see what somebody's going to do. They step up and say, okay, what are we going to do? How are we going to address this? And they want to succeed because they're all in this together. And it creates an atmosphere of success.
I love how you talk about the 48,000 executives that you've worked with and all the other projects over these 35 years have been your living laboratory, because I can see exactly that, because you're so observant and so in tune to people and how they connect with each other.
Thank you.
Like in looking at all of these examples and how people have either succeeded at building trust and partnering, or they failed, what's the biggest mistake that you've seen happen that maybe isn't intentional, but it might just be human nature? It could be habit or whatever. What's the biggest failure that you see consistently happen that people could address?
Well, I think the biggest failure is also the biggest opportunity. And that's why I wrote this book, because what I've seen is that you have a leader, or maybe it's a couple leaders, depending on how many organizations you have coming together, that are not committed to building the high trust culture. And so they are not bought in. And so their team doesn't fully buy in. And so while they might go through the effort of trying to create a high trust environment, they aren't committed to it. Their actions or the way that they're operating is not consistent with a high trust culture. And so, if you really want to create trust, it starts with the leader, because the leader creates what's possible for that team, for that business, and for their customers. So I think that's really where it starts, with the leaders. And this particular book is about how to think and act like a trusted leader, so that your people will follow you. Because my definition of a leader is that a leader is someone who has followers, and following is 100% voluntary. So people follow you because they trust you.
And I think that's a great point, is that following really is voluntary. And you may be a leader, and of course your employees follow you because they're paid to, they're your employees, but that's not really the true definition of a leader. And it's fascinating to hear you talk about this difference between a leader who can essentially lead by inspiration because people trust them so much. And there was the Edelman Trust Barometer that came out earlier this year in January, talked about one of the things that people are expecting as they look at who to trust and where, is that they're looking for business leaders to step up and actually take a stand on a topic, an issue, whatever is going on, and not wait for the government to respond, media to respond. Now, this is night and day from even a few years ago, when our expectations were business leaders need to run the business. But now society is saying we expect business leaders to be the leaders, and that comes from trust, I'm assuming. Would you say?
Well, I think it comes from a couple things. One is that they don't trust government nearly as much as they used to. And I see they've seen things like the effect that Facebook and Twitter, businesses have. And so I think they're thinking that leaders, they trust leaders more than they trust government. So they think that the leaders need to step up and do these things. However, the same research shows that way over half, it's 60 some percent of people don't trust businesses either. They don't trust business leaders. They believe that they will lie to get what they want, and all they want is profit. So leaders have a ways to go in being trustworthy in the eyes of the public. But trust is the litmus test of everything that happens in society, because if you don't trust someone, you're not going to move forward. And in a business, if you don't trust your leader and you don't trust what's happening, even if you're getting paid, you're not going to be working as hard. You're not going to engage your creative mind. And we can talk more about that too, how it's essential for creativity. but you also are going to slow down. So your momentum and your production will be far slower than it would be if you had high trust with a high communication.
And that's an important point. And you and I have talked about this a little bit, that connection between trust and innovation. And when teams do come together to start to come up with ideas, or ideally use the perpetual innovation process to come up with their ideas, you see that dynamic where the leaders may say, this is where we need your best ideas. We have this specific problem. It's an opportunity. We need great ideas to be able to pursue it. However, nobody wants to raise their hand because they know doing that essentially puts their neck on the chopping block. So there's a big part of complete lack of trust of the people who are saying, bring your ideas forward, that absolutely hinders any opportunity for innovation, for creative thinking, which ultimately affects the financial performance. So here are these leaders who are saying, this is what I need, yet their very behavior stops the thing they say they want from actually happening.
And they don't even realize it.
Do they? Is it that they don't realize it, or is it that they don't care?
I don't think they even realize it. Maybe some don't care, but I like to give people the benefit of the doubt. I don't think they can connect the dots.
Good point.
I think that they see themselves as providing a vision, and not realizing that their ultimate thing they really need to provide is the culture, the atmosphere that allows their people to. So let me just talk about it a little bit. So if I'm working for a trusted leader, I'm here. I've got a new job. I've got a 13-year-old in braces. I got a mortgage. I got a spouse, and so I need a job. And so I've met this trusted leader, and they know their primary job is to develop high trust. So I meet them and I go, well, this is kind of cool. I could trust this person. At least I'm willing to give it a shot. So I feel like I'm choosing to be a part of this business, part of this team, maybe a part of an effort, an initiative. And so does everyone else. So everyone else is feeling like, okay, we're here for choice. And pretty quickly then that begins to create a sense of togetherness. We're in this together. We're really a team. And so you get cohesion. And without cohesion, you can never get momentum. You have nothing to push against. So you're getting cohesion. We are in this. And that leads to a sense of commitment, committed to our leader, committed to each other. And I really know we've got it when the team starts saying things like, we're committed to doing whatever it takes to get this done, to really create something extraordinary. And that leads to the atmosphere that allows for creativity and innovation to occur. And until you've created that atmosphere, it is impossible for this team to be creative. And the creativity leads to improvements and breakthroughs and all sorts of different wonderful things. And that leads to extraordinary outcomes, the growth of the business, the growth of the individuals, maybe even the growth of an industry or a country. And that's really the mode that we've seen over and over and over. But so many times people just want to jump right in without creating the atmosphere that allows for the creativity and innovation to occur. And it falls flat. It isn't as good as it could have been or should have been. And then we see even more, it doesn't get implemented because there's too much push-pull and people didn't really buy in and they didn't take ownership.
And I think that also creates damage down the road, because how many times have we said, oh yeah, well, this is the executive's initiative, but we tried this last time and it never worked. And so people go into these future initiatives half-hearted because they saw nothing happen to it from previous initiatives. So then it continues to erode that trust.
It does. It's we call it baggage. You bring your baggage with you. It's like the past just projects right into the present, right into the future. Yeah.
Well, and I know you've seen this 100 times where something new is rolled out and they have people helping with change management and new ideas and things that are going to be different. And this time, like, we'll give that CEO credit. They really do want to make it work, yet it takes forever to get anything to have traction or for it to stick, because there's so much, I guess, emotional baggage and callous of the employees because they've heard it all before. And it's like, why bother? Why change? It didn't happen before. So they don't trust any kind of new initiative that comes out.
That's why we use the partnering process to help with that, to actually align everyone and deal with those things, so that you get buy-in and remember, people don't argue with what they help to create.
That's right.
So you create a forum for them along with the CEO. They have to be there too, to co-create. What is the parameters? What are we going to do? What would success look like? How will it happen? And then you can let the team kind of just unleash themselves on it, because you have alignment and you have commitment and cohesion. Without cohesion, it's like if you were like, think about the swimmers. The Olympics is about to start and they're swimming, but if they didn't have the end of the pool to push against to get real momentum, well, yeah, there's nothing to push against.
Yeah,
to get momentum. And that's the same thing that happens in business. So they're just swimming and swimming and swimming and swimming.
Now, to a couple of people who I've watched who are very good at understanding how to build the culture for trust. One is Roy Spence, and he wrote the book, It's Not What You Sell, It's What You Stand For. And it came out before Simon Sinek's Start With Why. And with both of these books, it's very focused on purpose as the foundation for how a company operates. And from purpose comes a lot of other things, including innovation. But can you talk about that relationship and maybe order between developing purpose and trust and getting people to believe that when a company articulates their purpose, and, if you're a Zappos or that kind of purpose-oriented company, that, how that relationship between purpose and trust ultimately starts to catapult some of those innovative ideas?
I think that purpose is essential for your culture. So I always think of, you have your strategy, which is sort of where you need to come up with what is the purpose of your business? What are you trying to achieve? And to whom are you trying to achieve it? And then after that, you begin to think about, well, what is the culture that we need in order to achieve this strategy? And so I think they're completely tied together. Depending on what you're trying to achieve. But culture of trust is something that I have yet to see a business that didn't thrive when they worked hard to develop a culture of trust, no matter what their purpose was. Because what I've seen is that I did some anecdotal research with 1,000 different people. And I asked them, what is it, think about the best thing you've ever done in your business, in your business or in your career. And what was it that made it so great? And I asked them the converse question, think about the worst thing that ever happened. And what was it that made it so bad? And what 95% said that what made it so great was their communication. And 98% said, what was it that made it so bad? And they said it was poor communication or lack of communication. And so what I've realized in working with these hundreds and hundreds of teams is that lack of trust shows up as poor communication. And so if you've got poor communication in your business, you've got trust issues. If you've got people that aren't willing to tell you their truth or be open and honest or create, you've got trust issues. And so purpose, to me, there's lots of purposes for a business, and you need to have one so that your people can align behind it. What I see far too often is that we have many purposes. We have many things that we're trying to do, and they're not in alignment. So you may say, I'm a car manufacturer, and yet the way that we operate and we act, it doesn't have anything to do with car manufacturing. We go off on tangents on different things. And that's what I see. What really undermines large, complex organizations, I see this over and over and over, is too many purposes. We have to have a purpose.
That's so true. And it's back to what you were talking about, how you get teams to come together with really high trust in a short amount of time is focus, right? And a single purpose really provides that focus every single day, whether it's in a typical day-to-day work environment or one that's during a lot of change or chaos or anything like that, is that focus.
And the reason that is so essential is because what really undermines large, complex organizations is complexity. And if you can have a purpose and everyone's aligned behind it,
Mm-hmm.
and then you have the leadership to support it, and you have the culture that is consistent with high trust, high performance, and you measure how you're doing, you are going to create extraordinary things. I call it the nozzle effect. It's a business nozzle.
Uh-huh.
So if you had a garden hose and you were running water through the garden hose, just coming out. Then if you took a nozzle and you put it on there and you tighten it down to a narrow spray, all of a sudden you got huge velocity, huge momentum, same resources.
Uh-huh.
And that is exactly what you're trying to do, is create this business nozzle. But you can't do it without a high trust culture because people won't align.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Now, who are some of the businesses or leaders that you've seen who do this really well?
Well, you mentioned Zappos, and I really thought that Tony, I know he's not with us anymore, but I thought Tony Hesh was a great CEO. And I remember listening to him give some presentations some years ago, and he talked about the other businesses he started before Zappos and how the mistake he made was that he didn't focus on culture first and culture as the essential thing. And so in his business for Zappos, he and his partners, culture was the most important thing. And that's what they focused on. And so I love that. Another business I think that does a great job with trust is Toyota. I know Toyota in the US. I think that they do a very good job of creating trust with their people and creating excellent outcomes, high quality. I think that they just do a great job. They train people inside, and they've done a huge job of modernization and they're using AI and robots. They're using that very, very well, while also creating the culture where the people are excelling and helping the business to excel. Another business that I have worked with quite a long time is the San Francisco International Airport. Now, it's a kind of a public entity, but the leaders there are 100% focused on culture, and their partnering culture is essential to the delivery of their facility and the maintenance of their facility, but it's also for the passenger experience. And so I think that you don't have to be a private business. You can be a public business, and you can also be a public entity, and these things still have the same benefit, maybe even more benefit, because you're certainly going to stand out in a crowd. And then the last business I think does a really great job with culture, a high trust culture, is Southwest Airlines. And I fly quite a bit, and there is a very difference in every plane I've ever been on with Southwest. The culture on that plane is different than it is on the other airlines, and even the check-in process is different. So, and they have the same peanuts. So, culture is the culture of trust. It's very, very essential, and it's made all of these companies stand out. It always will. It will be a competitive advantage that nobody will understand how you're doing it, and nobody will be able to ever meet you.
And that's interesting, because I think there's plenty of companies who try and copy and paste actions or details from any number of these companies or ones similar to them, like you've talked about, hoping that creates the innovative culture, the trusted culture, whatever it may be. But I think there's always those elements that you can be as open and honest about how you create them in your own company that work really well to create that trust that leads to the ideas and innovation, that when you do them right, nobody else can copy, because nobody else is your company. And that's one thing that people don't understand is that.
And I completely trust that there is a collective wisdom in your team and in your business.
Mm-hmm.
And when you create a high trust environment, you unleash that collective wisdom. No one will ever be able to compete with that.
Now, it's a very important point, and I know we're just about out of time here, but as we read about the Great Resignation and what 41% of people not intending to go back to their job or same kind of job or whatever it is, what do you see is that the role that trust plays in those things? Because if we look at how you bring cohesion to teams, a lot of it is having the same people on a team because you have that legacy mind that thinks together as one. How do you see trust playing that role in making sure that you don't lose a big part of your team and the outcomes that come because you have to start over with a lot of new team members?
Well, I think there's a couple things I see going on. One is that more and more businesses, I think it's over 80%, they expect to be working remotely at least part of the time. And so I think what we have to do is not think about technology as being a problem, but being an opportunity, and that you have to do the same things that work inside when you're face to face as we do when you're remotely. And that is, I believe proximity is power. So you have to have that structure that allows for you to have that proximity. And I don't think it happens on Slack, and I don't think it happens on email, and it doesn't happen through texting. It happens by having a face-to-face conversation with people. And so you've got to have some kind of structure that allows you to have that. The other thing I'm seeing and hearing, I just talked to a chief information officer of a large organization last week, and he was saying that they're seeing a lot of people just leaving. COVID changed their priorities, changed their values, and so they're just leaving. So I think if you want to keep your people, you have to create that high trust work environment that's exciting and that people want to do some extraordinary things, and allowing flexibility and things, which people are already doing. But what I have seen is that people will do what it takes when they are fully engaged, bought in, take ownership, and are excited about the outcome. There's nothing more exciting to the team than that. And then they begin to see each problem or each roadblock or milestone as something that they've achieved together. That is what motivates people.
I think it is. And I think there's a lot that isn't given credit about how meaningful those relationships are when we work together as a team. I remember when I was young in my career, I was telling my boss, and way before work from home was actually an option, or the kind of connection that we have right now. And I said, I think people would be perfectly fine with never coming into an office, and it would work out great. And he said, humans are social animals, and we really do need that aspect of our work to make it feel valuable. And I think that's something that we forget.
I think it's true. And you can get it through social, you can get it online. Right. But you also have to, it takes effort. I don't think we've yet gone to the point where we have people who their job is to make sure that happens.
Excellent. Well, Sue, thank you for being here with me today on Connect the Dots. People will want to know more about your work, learn more about your book, so they can get it on their radar for February of 2022. Where can people find you?
Yes, you can find me at sudico.com. That's SUDYCO, sudico.com. And you can sign up there to get information about the book. And also, we will be having a profile that I've developed for trusted leadership. So if you're interested in knowing where you fall along the trusted leadership continuum, it's free to anybody, and it will be up on the website in about a month. So check that out, and you can measure. You'll get a number. There's 5 parts to it, so there's lots of different components to it to help you know whether you're a trusted leader or how far you are along the continuum. Nobody's a trusted leader forever and in everything. It's a journey. So it helps you take your journey.
Excellent. Well, we'll watch for that probably about mid-August. Does that sound
That
right?
should be up by then.
Yeah, we'll watch for that. And then when it's available, we'll drop a link underneath this video so you can go and check it out. Sue, thank you so much for joining me here
Thank you
today.
so much, Carla. I really appreciate it so much.
Absolutely. Trust. It is a big part of business right now and today. And thank you for joining me today and with my conversation with Sue Dyer. Follow me, connect with me on LinkedIn, subscribe to my channel on YouTube so you can receive early notifications about each video that I release or show that I have for a live stream for Connect the Dots. I'm Carla Johnson. Thank you for joining me again this week.